staff and guests, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Limited public comment at this time. Any member of the public wishing to address the board may do so for up to 3 minutes. Is there any public comment? Mr. Powers?
Good morning. Thank you
Morning.
for hearing our case this morning. Baycorp is seeking support of the Berry County Board of Commissioners to rezone 2 parcels from rural residential to mixed use for future lodging. The strategic rezoning will blend perfectly with numerous contiguous properties already zoned mixed use or commercial, while acting in the spirit of the Berry County future land use map and the urban planning and the master plan. Bay Point is experiencing rapid growth with over 100,000 visitors annually. Although known for weddings, it's only 50% of our business. The remainder are a diverse group of corporate, educational, municipalities, financial, nonprofits, and social groups. Lodging is often at 100% capacity, so we regularly send our guests to other hotels that aren't located in Berry County. Baycorp has secured majority support from the Ormsville Township Board and unanimous support from the Berry County, Wayland, Nazi, and Plainwell Area Chambers of Commerce and the Berry County Economic Development Alliance, the Gun Lake Business Association, and numerous Gun Lake area and Berry and Allegheny County businesses. Baycorp currently employs 140 employees with an annual payroll exceeding $2.4 million. These employees and their families primarily reside and reinvest their earnings back into Berry County, further strengthening our local economy. We would expect to add 10 to 15 additional jobs as a result of this rezoning and subsequent lodging expansion. Baycorp is the largest private employer and taxpayer in Orangeville Township, contributing $20,000 a month in real estate property taxes, and $30,000 a month in sales and use tax to state and local governments. Baycorp fully supports local businesses by spending hundreds of thousands of dollars annually purchasing equipment and supplies and services from local vendors, primarily in Berry County. This is to support our food and beverage operations, heating, cooling, refrigeration, plumbing, painting, and electrical repairs, maintenance, remodeling, and construction projects. Bay Point also supports a variety of local faith-based organizations, schools, charities, nonprofits, and local businesses. Bay Point transient guests and corporate clients spend hundreds of thousands of dollars annually at Berry County merchants, supporting and enriching our local economy and this community. As a result, Bay Point makes a significant contribution to our local residents' increased real estate values and a robust, vibrant, and dynamic lifestyle. For these reasons, we humbly ask the Berry County Board of Commissioners to approve the rezoning of these 2 parcels from rural residential to mixed use.
Thank you.
Very much.
Is there further public comment?
Joel Kaptein, Winchester Drive. When Mike comments about how his plan fits perfectly in those with other areas, the other lots in the area, these are all houses. Everything else around him is rural residential. These lots here are 60 feet wide on Winchester Drive, which is private. Down Marsh Road, they're 50 feet wide. Back in 2018, when he tried to get this approved in the first place, all the red are those opposed. Okay? As far as fitting perfectly goes, if you would please. This is advertised indoor events only. This was a couple, it was 2 Sundays ago. You want me to let that keep playing and see how long it takes to get annoying? Let's try. This is this past Sunday. I can hear this to my house, and he always says that I'm 1,000 feet away. Shouldn't be able to hear it. In spite of dead-end private property, private drive no trespassing, towed at owner's expense. For Gun Lake Live, we have cars coming parked literally right on the road, okay? I called cops, they came, 2 of the 3 came, the third one got some assistance in getting towed. Other experiences with Mr. Powers. A judge ordered the defendant shall not remove or do anything to take down the fence that separates Ori Drive from Winchester Drive. That was an existing fence, been there since 1995. He took it down anyway. When I asked him about it, he sent me an email from the property owner at the end of my street that gave him permission to take down the chain link fence and replace it with a vinyl fence along the side of her property. He took the whole fence down, said it was in disrepair, didn't give me a chance to fix it. What he also did say is when you look at the actual email, he solicited a phone call from her to get that permission, which he conveniently deleted from the permission he sent me. I don't talk to him about this. I don't bring up his concerns. He continues to say there are no problems, they don't exist, because there aren't any complaints. In spite of us showing up here repeatedly with evidence that that is not the case.
30 seconds, sir.
The neighbors on my side from Chicago, end of the street Lansing, across the street Kalamazoo, the end of the road Las Vegas. Next to that's Caledonia, next to that's West Virginia. That's why they're not here. I showed you what they think though. It's all right there. If you think this is working perfectly, it's not. Imagine sticking this on that island in the middle of Blue Lagoon and putting his outdoor speakers on and see what those people would think. Ask yourself if you want it in your backyard. We don't. It's in the middle of all our houses. I don't think it belongs there. Nothing he says is ever going to change that.
Thank you for your comments.
That's another reason I don't talk to him.
Is there further public comment? Ma'am.
My name is Linda Ribble. I've given you a packet of pictures. Do you all have them? Picture number 1, as you can see, is looking north from our property and was taken Wednesday, August 4th during a Wednesday night live event. One of several this performer does at Bay Point during the summer. It shows that the 3 regular parking lots are full, including the one at Bay Point Woods, and the overflow cars are then parked at the barn Bay Point wants to tear down and build these cottages on. Picture 2 and 3 is this past week, September 1st, of the Wednesday Night Live. And as you can see, cars are backed up into the roadway and at a standstill. We're trying to find parking and the attendant doesn't know where to park any more cars, as they've already filled the area by the barn. As you can also see in picture number 2, if you look over the cars in the road, an already packed area either side of the barn. 4 years ago, Bay Point or Bay Woods was first brought before planning and zoning. Nothing was mentioned of music events, which would require, per planning and zoning requirements, to provide a certain amount of additional parking spaces on top of normal hotel parking. These music events are growing in excess of what the parking lots can handle. There simply is not enough room in this area for all these planned projects. The planned cottages will have at least 20 to 30 additional vehicles. Again, more congestion in an already overcrowded area. Not just for normal vehicle traffic, but now you're going to add more and more pedestrians to the mix of things. These are accidents waiting to happen, and no amount of security staff is going to be able to prevent these from occurring. This is a rural area. Crosswalks, stop signals, crossing guards, or speed bumps are not going to stop accidents. When you mix vehicles with people in a congested area, crossing the road to access the main building to eat breakfast, lunch, or have dinner. The swimming pool and other amenities are located all at the main building and on the lakeside. Again, everyone from Bay Woods area has to cross a very busy road to use these facilities. These guests now step into the roadway without looking and assume every car or truck is going to stop and see them, or see them and stop. Bay Point's lawyer said at the last planning and zoning meeting that the law holds that owners of property have a right to a reasonable return on their investment, and zoning cannot unreasonably deprive the owner of that return. Well, that works 2 ways. Each one of our surrounding neighbors have invested in our property, paying for it on our own by ourselves.
I'll ask you to summarize your comments.
We don't have investors with deep pockets that shell out money along the way.
Thank you for your comments. Is there further public comment?
My name is Elizabeth Bronson, and I'm located on Ori Drive. My husband and I strongly oppose the rezoning of the 2 parcels on Ori Drive from rural residential to mixed use. As we have attended the planning and zoning meetings over the past several months, we've expressed our concern to the board and what impact this would be on the neighboring area and our home. This area is not intended for more mixed-use properties. It's not intended to be developed any more than it already has been. When the PUD that Bay Point Woods is on, with the PUD that Bay Point Woods is on, that is still considered rural residential zone. Every property on the south side of Ori Drive and further south is also rural residential. Why do we need more mixed use in the area at this time? We ask you to strongly consider what the Planning and Zoning Board are recommending, as they've done their due diligence in checking the properties that are being requested to be rezoned to mixed use. They've walked the properties to see how much of the properties are covered with wetland and how much is actually usable land. This is a wetland that we like to keep this way without disrupting the area. The beautiful field next to our house was destroyed when Bay Point Woods was built, and we don't want to lose more of our wildlife and safe haven that the animals have with this wetland. Any changes to these 2 properties that are being requested to be rezoned would be detrimental to our property. We only have one way in and one way out of our house, and with more traffic, whether it's more guests or construction traffic, it would become a greater issue for us and possibly any emergency vehicles that may need to reach us. According to the Berry County Zoning Ordinance, Section 101, the purpose and intent, it states to promote and protect the public health, safety, and general welfare, and to promote healthful surroundings for family life in residential areas. Please consider this, as this is a residential area not meant for any more commercial businesses. We ask that you deny the rezoning of these parcels.
Thank you for your comments. Is there further public comment?
My name is David Tripp. I represent
Hold on, Mr. Tripp. We have a question from a commissioner.
Should this be discussed when it comes up on the
Under the rules, anybody can comment on anything they like during public comment. You were right. We did make that change a couple of years ago. We removed that provision. So. You may proceed.
Thank you. I'm also a Gun Lake resident. An important consideration for you to look at is what the future land use map looks like. It was enacted in 2005, and surprisingly, one of the people on the Planning Commission said, well, we aren't ready to move forward from 2005. In other words, it's not to be used to give consideration to this plan. Again, this is urban planning area in the future land use. It also, I believe, blends in with what's there now. The structures that would be placed on the property would be residential type structures. They're the cottages. If you've ever been there, they look like almost like homes or duplexes. It's not as though these would be storefronts or commercial looking pole barns or anything like that. It looks residential. As far as the complaints, again and again and again, from 3 or 4 of the 14 neighbors that were given notice, I think they've been unsubstantiated complaints. They never call the police to have someone independently verify whether or not there's any noise or problems or issues. They simply appear here and complain about it time and time again. The other 10 people apparently are happy with it. At least they certainly don't oppose it. Even the people on the lakefront where Bay Point itself is located, they've written letters saying Bay Point is a good neighbor, and quite frankly, I know that these 3 or 4 people have opposed this from the beginning, and I think continue to oppose it, and would oppose anything that Bay Point or Bay Point Woods would like to do. One thing that I have to comment on, and that is the statements by Jim Dull. After I read the comments and the minutes, I called Mr. Dull and got email confirmation that he's got nothing to do with development there. The only requirement he has is that the groundwater be taken care of so it doesn't go on to contiguous properties. That was done before in the original plan, and that is done in this plan also. As far as the claims that there are wetlands, Mr. Powers did get with his engineer, who indicated that as far as he could see, there's no need to even get EGLE permit. There's a slight modification that he will do to the plan, and then once that modification is made, there's no requirement that he go to EGLE to get a permit. These are not wetlands upon which he's going to build.
We'll ask you to summarize your comments.
Thank you. Again, I see no reason for denial of the request. It follows the future land use. The same complaints were heard before this was approved the last time in 2018, and it's the same complaints. I see no substantiation of those complaints, and we would ask that you approve the rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there further public comment? Hearing no further public comment, we'll move ahead. Jim McManus. We begin today's work by considering 7 farmland PA 116 requests. If there's no objection from commissioners, I'd like to take this recommendation in one vote instead of voting 7 times. So at this time, the chair would entertain a motion for recommendation. Chair would entertain a motion to recommend approval of the following farmland agreements to be considered individually by the board. PA 116 applications 2021-01, 02, 03, 04, 05, 06, and 07.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
That motion is made by Gibson, supported by Connor. Discussion. Jim?
Sure. Even the planning commission, when we reviewed it, chose to make one motion for all the...
Yeah, I saw that.
Since we have one owner, we were able to do that, even though there's a number of different properties, and they fall within 2 different townships. Each of the properties are zoned, planned for agriculture or rural residential use, in which ag is a by right use. So the planning commission unanimously recommended that these requests be approved.
Okay. Is there any discussion from commissioners?
They're all the same farm. Excuse me, they're all the same farm. It's just seemed the right thing to do.
Hearing no further discussion, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The next item. At this time, the chair would entertain a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of the contract renewal for professional code inspections, PCI, for 5 years, retroactive to August 1, 2021. So moved.
Support.
That motion is made by Smelker, supported by Getty. Discussion.
Sure. So Eric Thompson from PCI is here, if you have any questions. The contract agreement was submitted to you along with the proposed fee schedule. You're not proposing any changes to the fee schedule?
No changes to the fee schedule.
So we generally have done these in 5-year increments and then have them renewed over time.
So, thank you for having me here today and considering our contract renewal. As Jim said, we aren't proposing any changes to the fee schedule. This is a fee schedule that's been in place since 2006. So, but it's working well for us. Last couple years have been pretty exciting for us. We've done some major...
Excitement and code inspection.
Yes. We've done some really cool projects to enhance the quality service of providing to the residents of the community. We've implemented new information systems, utilizing BSNA software that's allowed us to be very interactive and provide permit holders with real-time updates on their permit status, inspection results, getting certificates of occupancy. So that's been very, very well received. Yeah, we're doing some pretty cool things right now and going forward. So we're looking forward to another 5 years here, hopefully.
Great. Thank you. Questions or comments from commissioners? Any questions or comments? Sorry, my motion keeps disappearing in front of me. Hearing none, the question before the board is to recommend the Board of Commissioners approval of the contract renewal for professional code inspections, PCI, for 5 years, retroactive to August 1, 2021. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you. And good luck continuing the excitement.
Yes, thank you very much.
No, we do need excitement and a positive attitude in this work, so thank you. The next item. At this time, the chair would entertain a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners denial of map change A2 2021 from rural residential to mixed use in Section 5 of Orangeville Township.
I make that motion.
Support?
That motion is made by Connor, supported by Smelker. Discussion. Jim?
Sure. So this was brought to you previously, and you as a board sent it back to the Planning Commission for further consideration. The Planning Commission on August 23rd held a new public hearing, and we had significant public comment. The minutes were included with your packet, so hopefully you had a chance to review those, along with a lot of comment from the applicant and the Planning Commission themselves. Each of the members had significant comments. The Planning Commission recommended after the public hearing that the rezoning be denied with a 6-to-1 vote. And then that recommendation is presented to you, so that's what's in front of you today.
This is a unique vote that we have to make. It's a decision that we have to set aside our emotions, set aside our preconceptions about development and any pre-held beliefs, and make a decision based on rule of law. So, Jim, can you explain what we have to make a decision on? We're being asked to decide on the appropriateness of the request?
Well, let me summarize. First of all, that when I came to you previously, there were two different items that were brought before you. One was a laundromat building with vending machines. The Planning Commission did close that one out with a recommendation to approve a laundry facility, but they put the stipulation on that it be moved to the far end of the parking lot. That's not part of your decision today, so that's already been decided. The Planning Commission took care of that. This is a map change where you would take a piece of property and you rezone it. The request is to rezone it from a rural residential category to a mixed-use category. That's all really at the moment that's being decided. So when you look at this request, you can, in a way, you can forget about the fact that there's an applicant and people in the room. You can forget that they talked about different kinds of uses that might be put on there. When you rezone a piece of property, it opens up the potential for the different types of uses within the zoning district that you're going to be rezoning it into if you approve it. So if you rezone it mixed use, then anything that's available in the mixed use could be there. Now, when the Planning Commission completed the master plan back in 2005, this area was planned for urban type of growth. We had 5 urban growth areas. Gun Lake was one of them, and that urban area, and I think Dave's going to put that up if he can on the board, extended down to Wildwood Road. So through this property and down to the corner, essentially, which covered most of Gun Lake. What the Planning Commission recommendation really says, and the one comment that was brought up was Jack Warnick says maybe this area isn't ready for it. The Planning Commission is essentially saying that the plan, which is 15 years old, okay, that may not be appropriate. We need to, the recommendation is we're going to not follow the recommendation of the plan, and we're not going to recommend that this rezoning go through. If you agree with that, then essentially that area then would no longer be considered as an urban growth area. So that's really the question at hand. We understand, and we're already making progress, that the plan has to be redone. When we did the 2005 plan, the sunset on that was a 2020 ideal. So we have got RFQs out to companies, and we hope to begin the process of a new plan here in the foreseeable fall, hopefully. So what your decision today will ultimately determine is what the future of the current document is. So if you agree with the Planning Commission basis of their denials and their assessment, then that area will no longer be really, even though it's going to be on paper, but it really will not be considered as an urban development area. If you disagree with it, then you would choose to say that the Planning Commission's decisions or basis of their decision is not necessarily valid, and we're going to uphold the document, okay, as the standalone. So that's really where we're at today. So, and that's the legislative part of this process. That's why you're here. So that's when we go through the board.
So I'd like to set some ground rules on how we're going to decide this, and I want your feedback, commissioners. I'd like to hear the arguments for, the pros, and the cons. And I'd specifically like to hear from Vice Chair Connor on how and why the Planning Commission decided what they did. We do have Mr. Powers here, and I'll leave it up to the board if you want to hear his thoughts and hear a presentation from him. So does it sound good? We're going to hear arguments for, arguments against?
Amongst us.
Amongst us.
Yeah. Will we have an opportunity to ask some questions?
Absolutely. So Jim is going to be involved in this conversation. So after we hear pros and cons, then we'll decide whether we want to hear from Mr. Powers. So Vivian, can you share what the pros and what the cons are of approving this request?
Well, can we go back to that other map first, because I'd like to point out a few things. And we did have a very good discussion, and I'd like to get some clarification. Jim, Mr. Tripp is saying that that's not a wetland.
That's not what he's saying. He said if they adjust their document, then they wouldn't need to get a permit because they're not going to be encroaching into the wetland.
No, I did believe he said it wasn't a wetland, that their engineer had come out and it wasn't a wetland.
That's not what I heard.
Oh, it is a wetland.
Absolutely.
It is a wetland. I'm sorry, I misunderstood you.
Let's
Okay.
back up just a second.
I need to address this because it's a little, I understand that, I'm gonna come over here and then I guess I'll go over there. I'm kind of short.
We have a laser pointer.
And there's somebody tall.
Here,
That rural residential starts right there, Bull Cross. That's the northern boundary for rural residential. Anything south of there is rural residential, except where the houses go along the shore, that's recreational lakes. So just so you know, it kind of makes it look like rural residential starts on this other drive, but it's actually up there. Thanks for giving my pen back. Thank you. Can you do that over there? Sure. So it starts,
all the way down like
no,
this.
it starts a spot higher.
Oh, right
Yeah,
there.
there you go,
Right
yeah.
there.
And the wetland, if you look at, let me get back to my microphone. The wetland, if you look at mixed use, the definition, it doesn't mention wetland. If you look at the definition of rural residential, it's got wetlands right in the definition.
So are you saying that a reason for denial would be because it has a wetland?
Well, no, I'm just giving you what we talked about at the last meeting. It is certainly something to consider. I mean, that wetlands, there really isn't a place for a wetland in mixed use. I don't see if you can...
Okay. So,
But anyways.
there are reasons that it doesn't fit the mixed use.
We have, right, reasons it doesn't fit the mixed use. Even the current Bay Point Woods is on rural residential, and it was created with a PUD. So,
all of the people, all the commissioners at the zoning meeting were, except for the chair, voted for it, and they were all very well thought out. They had done their research, they had been over there, they had walked it. Now, I asked Jim Dull to be here because he walked it with me to just tell me a little bit about drainage issues that could happen. He hasn't seen a plan because they're not to that stage yet. But he said if correct draining didn't happen, and it has at the other Bay Point Woods, the current one, there would be no recourse except to create a county drain. So, because it is pretty tight in there. I don't see any of these pictures here. I was hoping that I could see the current Bay Point Woods, but all the residents on Winchester, I looked, well, not all of them, but I looked at some of the old, they had a bunch of petitions that people had signed, and Joel Captain is right. A lot of those people aren't here today because they're not from here. They're from other places, so they can't be here to speak today. And the same during the week when we have our meeting, they're not there because they don't live in Berry County. And it was pretty clear that all the other commissioners on the Planning Commission, and we even got compliments during public comment at the end about how well thought out, how researched it was this time, that it doesn't fit there. It's rural residential.
Well, that's, we want to have the same type of discussion here today.
I want to say this, that the minutes, as I mentioned,
Yeah.
are included, so all those comments.
So,
in your back.
what are the reasons we could support generally a zoning request?
Well,
Does it fit the plan? Does it?
that's ultimately it. If you're going to approve a rezoning, it should fit the plan. So does the plan classification correspond to a rezoning request for the classification? If this rezoning request were to go from a mixed use, for example, to an ag concept, and the area was zoned as urban development, okay, that doesn't make a lot of sense to put ag in an urban area. So that's something that probably wouldn't go through. To say that mixed use is something that is more urban, so the request was considered. It was a legitimate request. Your decision is, should it be approved just solely on the basis of the plan, or does the Planning Commission's documentation and basis of their reasoning for denial, is that a big enough basis to deny the request? In which case then, as a planning department, we would then advise people in that specific area that really we're not looking at this as urban development anymore, even though the plan calls for it, and we'll adjust it when the new plan comes in.
Right. So this is a little bit different than votes we usually take.
Well, they're all the same. I mean,
Yeah,
it's just,
but-
this is, because the plan, we usually don't have a denial that comes out of the Planning Commission. It doesn't happen all the time, because in most cases, the decisions are fairly straightforward. This is a little bit more challenging in that regard.
Right. Let's open it up to commissioners. Except first I'd like to call on Commissioner Getty, who works professionally in planning and zoning, as we talked about before, an exciting field. So, can you share with us your perspective and how we should go about considering this?
First of all, planning and zoning usually is not an exciting field, so let's just, this being the exception. So much of the complaints that we're hearing are about parking and noise, really from an existing use. And I'm not sure directly relate to the proposed rezoning. I think there are nuisance issues with events that are over-attended for their parking.
and there may be noise issues, so I don't know if those are in violation, but I want to compartmentalize those issues. When we look at rezoning, I look at what does the future land use map say, because that's what property owners, developers, residents use to make very important financial decisions. Bay Corp used the future land use map and the master plan to do and make important planning decisions for their business. And it seems reasonable that they could count on that being an urban planning area, especially since the banquet center and the cottages were developed adjacent to this, that the county would follow the plan.
So you're saying that it is reasonable and practical to believe that the future land use can see that property developed? People can see that in the future?
If I were somebody looking at the future land use plan, that's what I would surmise.
Okay, going to open it up for questions or comments from commissioners. We'll start down here with Commissioner Campbell.
Lucky Bruce. Okay.
Lucky Bruce.
Well, this is a difficult topic we're dealing with, and I'm finding out how difficult it can be to be a commissioner. I did pay a visit to the parcels being discussed on Sunday morning of this week. I also continued on to the existing cottages, the banquet facilities, and the outdoor wedding area, which is on the west side in the back. I found everything to be immaculate and very classy. Any county would be proud to have such a complex within the boundaries. It also has a beautiful white privacy fence separating it from surrounding properties. The parcels are located directly between the main inn in the east side and the banquet facility on the west side. It seems like a logical spot for the Bay Point footprint to expand. I have extensively studied the Berry County Planning Commission meeting minutes of August 23rd, 2021, taking into consideration all complaints and letters of support, which included the Orangeville Township Board. Therefore, unless other facts are brought forth, I do plan to support this request.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Jackson.
Jim, is there another instance of the Planning Commission? I mean, you've been with the Planning and Zoning for a while, that have looked at the master use plan and decided to go against it, and as far as you said, this is a 2005 plan.
Right.
And if we decide not, or I guess to go forward with the recommendation of the board, we're essentially changing the plan. Has that happened in the past before?
No, I think every rezoning request that was presented before would have fallen in line with the plan objectives.
Okay. And just for some background, Bay Point was built, the original Bay Point Hotel. How long has that been there?
Well, the original was there probably 70 years ago.
Right.
So they redid it 18
18 years ago.
So before this ordinance went in. But
Okay, and then Bay Point Woods across the street has been there how long? 4 years? So,
18, right? We had the meeting in 18,
okay.
so
Okay, how many acres is Bay Point Woods currently? What does that encompass back in there?
3.5
Okay, so the cottages that are on there?
are within an acre of it.
Okay. Okay, how many square feet of buildings has the Planning and Zoning Commission approved from the original Bay Point through Bay Point Woods? Any idea?
So that would be Bay Point Woods, Bay Point, the boathouse, the pavilion, the woods themselves, so a couple 100,000 square feet.
Okay, that's what I was estimating too, probably 200 to 250,000 square feet of buildings have been approved. Was that all mixed use prior to?
No, the Woods is sitting on an RR that was approved as a special use permit to be a plan unit development.
Okay, so the Woods is a planned unit development also?
Yep.
Okay.
And then where the boathouse was, that was a rezoning request that was completed several years ago to go from RL to mixed use.
So the precedence the board set was they've already changed rural residential to mixed use in the past.
It was recreational lake.
Recreational lake. Bay Point Woods was also?
That was not a rezoning request.
That was not a rezoning request, okay. So it is an urban development zone,
That's correct.
planned on development. We've got 250,000 square feet of buildings that have already been approved. And I like Catherine's comments about continuing to stay compartmentalized with what we're doing here. So it seems that this board has approved all of these requests, and now we're looking at a smaller development, because even though it's 3.7 acres, there's probably only an acre and a half that's usable.
I'd say 2 at most.
Okay, 2 at most. So you're not going to be able to put the number of cottages that are there. This is going to double this. This is not going to double the size.
Double the size. They will have either 4 or 5 additional cottages within the space. So in terms of the number of cottages, that would double. But yes.
Okay.
That's the plan, to put the same unit there.
That's what was being discussed.
Right, that's what he would like to do, is put the same size cottages
That's correct.
in the new space.
That's correct.
But the wetland's obviously taking up a lot of space there, but the wetland isn't really a planning and zoning issue, that's an Eagle issue.
It is, but if there were a proposal to get into the wetland or to do something with the wetland, then we definitely have a role in it, and there is a process.
I'm kind of siding with Commissioner Campbell and some of the comments made by Catherine, Commissioner Getty, that I think there's a precedence that's been set here. This is a relatively small request. I'm concerned about taking the stance to change the plan, because I think there was an expectation that this was an urban development area, that it should remain an urban development area. It seems odd to, after approving 250,000 square feet of buildings, that we're going to plant our flag on this 3.7 and not use this. So there's some confusion in here, and following the notes, I didn't really see a reason. I saw the vote, but I didn't see because this reason. I don't know if that was usual, or we just have to ascertain that from reading the notes, so.
Well, because it's a recommendation, they don't have to cite like they would with a special use permit or a variance that there's a specific reason, but within the comments of the planning commissioners was the basis of their decisions.
Okay. All right, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Commissioner Connor.
I think that the planning commission looks at this as, you have to consider, you can't just consider what he wants to do. You have to consider the people that live there too, and you have to protect what they've lived there and how their lives are and what they invested in. And you have to look at that side of it too. You just can't look at the proposal. The master plan is very old, and as Jack Van Norwick said, it's future growth, but maybe that future growth isn't here yet, because it hasn't expanded. There are no highways around there. There's only county roads. The closest highway is a little over 3 miles north, and that's M179. But you still have to protect the people that are living in the rural residential. You have to consider them. It's not just does the plan fit? It's, this is rural residential. And we have heard a lot from these people, not just these people. Back when Bay Point Woods got started, I mean, we packed out the COA building, didn't we?
We did.
We did.
We have a special venue for that.
And that was the wintertime, but yeah, we had a special for that one. But you can remember those meetings, Ben?
I was there.
Yes. So, but But the plan is there, yes. I can't help it that the master plan is old. I mean, we've had some challenges with the economy and COVID, and it just keeps complicating it. But you do have to consider the other side of the story, which is all the people that have summer homes there, that live there year-round. There's just beyond the line in rural residential, there's a big horse farm. So it is rural residential. So I'm just bringing that, it's not just, does it fit the area? Yes, but so do the homes in that area, the rural residential homes in that area that bought there and invested. And that's their own hard-earned money. I mean, they, some people, that's their biggest investment that they have. Their biggest wealth is their property and their home, and you have to consider them too.
Thank you. Commissioner Gibson.
I would agree with Catherine's assessment.
Commissioner Smelker.
I feel that we put a zoning board, voted on them, interviewed them, and then we're going to turn around and ignore them. I disagree.
So the pros for approving this request are the consistency with the growth in the area and the precedents made by previous approvals by the zoning board. The cons are the land use features, or the land is not appropriate for mixed use, and the quality of life of rural residents.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
The growth in the area is the one person. When Lucas Pora wanted to come in and build down where there is a lot of commercial, that went flat. I mean, the people in two townships, Yankee and Orangeville, well, more so in Yankee, had that was not good. If you remember that, and that did not go.
Right, but what I'm saying is that
business section.
You have arguments against that, and that's appreciated. I'm just saying,
Yes,
this is objectively pros and cons. Now, the last person I'd like to potentially give the microphone is another member of the Planning Commission, Commissioner Minor. Would you wish to speak? If so, please. Thank you. Does the board wish to hear from Mr. Powers? If so, raise your hand. All right, Mr. Powers, we'll give you the floor for a few minutes if you'd like to make a pitch.
I guess before we do that, I really am hesitant to suggest that.
Okay.
Within the statute, there is a place for commissioners to have public hearings if you choose to do it.
I apologize.
That's why the Planning Commission has a public hearing, so that all that comment can be done. If you're going to allow him to speak, then you should have opened it up and allowed everybody to go.
We'll proceed ahead. I feel the...
Chair, could I ask a question?
Yeah.
At the basis of the complaints has been the parking or over parking and the noise. Has the Planning Commission addressed that with the Wednesday Night Live events? That seems to be the real sticking point. What has zoning done to address that?
The parking, because the parking is based on the size of buildings and the numbers of rooms and things of that nature, the facility for Bay Point Woods did meet our parking requirements. Bay Point in and of itself met our parking requirements. It may be something we need to address, but I don't know if it's a violation. The noise is definitely something that we need to take up. The difficulty is that oftentimes when these events are occurring, which is either after hours or on weekends, it's, we're not always around. But I have been, and my enforcement officer has been making a specific attempt to make sure that we get out there. I've been out there, I won't say every weekend, but nearly every weekend this summer, driving around Bay Point on Friday nights, Sunday afternoons, whenever I get a chance, just to see if I can hear things, see things, look at the parking, look at the different activities that are going on, watching the hours. haven't seen too much that's caused me to write anything up, but, you know, Mr. Kaptein's tapings are occurring on Sunday afternoons. I'm generally not around at that time. So that is, you know, that's probably something we need to take a look at the way the decisions were made initially and what was permitted and what wasn't as far as the stipulations go.
Yeah, because, I mean, I want to be clear, I'm quite sympathetic to what Commissioner Connor's comments are in terms of the rights of those residents to be able to enjoy their property. The noise and the parking have significantly affected their enjoyment of their property. So I'd like to see that addressed with enforcement or plan and zoning. It's separate from this issue of rezoning.
Is there any further discussion?
I still want to bring that it is rural residential, and while I can appreciate Catherine's comments also, that's what those people, that's why they settled there.
I feel the consensus of the board is to approve the map change request. Right now we have a denial on the floor, so the chair would entertain a motion to substitute the pending motion with recommendation to the Board of Commissioners approval of map change A to 2021. So if you support the Bay Point request, you'll support this amendment.
I'm not agreeing to you amending my motion.
No, that's why I'm entertaining a motion to do it. Does anyone want to make this motion?
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Jackson, supported by Getty, to substitute the pending motion with the recommendation to the Board of Commissioners approval of map change A2 2021. Discussion.
Point of order, I have a motion on the floor. Could you please show me in Roberts where this is allowed?
1, 2, 3, 4. 4 commissioners vote to substitute the motion.
And I said, would you please show me in Roberts where that can be done?
I think this is a really simple move. We just want to make yes for approval and no to deny. Do we want to take a break and consult the rules?
Yes, I would.
If you would like to support Commissioner Connor's request to review the rules, raise your hand. All right, we'll take a recess and review Robert's rules.